Hi, I'm Kristen Namdahl with Red Heart Yarns. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to knit the Radiance Knit Throw. This is a really interestingly constructed pattern in the respect that you start from the center out in a starburst, but instead of working on double point needles or some of the more advanced techniques, we're going to make this a lot more beginner friendly by working the first few rounds as rows and then joining in rounds for the larger section and sewing up that beginning section so it still looks like it was done in rounds from the beginning. A deceptively simple trick. We're using the Susan Bates size 13 circular knitting needles, and we're using a worsted weight yarn, but if you notice I've doubled the yarn, and that's what makes it an accommodating size yarn for this size needle. We've left the very long tail for weaving in the end of sewing the first 16 rows into rounds at the end, and I've cast on 8 stitches and worked the first row, which is a row of purl, straight purl. The second row is a pattern row, and it starts with a yarn over, which means you're going to wrap the yarn around your needle and then knit the first stitch. So that yarn over the beginning of the row just looks like an added loop added to the stitch. Then we're going to place a marker, and all of that is worked in a bracket, so we're going to do that 7 more times. Yarn over, knit 1, place marker. Not 7 more times, 7 times total. So we'll do a yarn over, knit 1, place marker, yarn over, knit 1, place marker. And we're working 2 strands at a time. I'm doing it off of the same ball because we only need 1 ball of this color. So what I've done is pulled the center pull and working the outside edge together. Yarn over, knit 1, slip a marker, yarn over, knit 1, marker, yarn over, knit 1, marker, and that's our 7 times within the bracket. Then the end of the pattern is a yarn over, knit 1. So now we should have 16 stitches on our needles. Row 3 is to just purl across. So as you're purling across, you're going to purl the stitches, purl the yarn overs, and slip the stitch markers. And what we'll be doing is increasing in each of these sections between the stitch markers on the rows going forward. So our next row of pattern is on row 4, and that starts out with yarn over, knit to marker, and you notice that whole section is done in brackets. So it says yarn over, knit to marker, and that means we're going to slip the marker, and we're going to repeat that 7 more times. So we're going to follow it what was in the brackets again, and then after the last marker is the end of the brackets, then yarn over, knit to end is the rest of the pattern. Okay, and then we'll purl the following row, and you notice we're growing in stitches. As you can imagine, the more you go working in the round, then you're going to have a lot more stitches on your needle. So even though we're working with 1 circular at this point, further along you may want to grab a couple other circulars in the same size so that as you're working around the circle you can accommodate all the stitches that way. Rows 1 through 15 are now complete, so we have a total of 8 stitches between stitch markers, or a total of 64 stitches total on the needle. Before going any further, I'm going to cut the yarn and change to my second color, which is the brick red. I'm going to leave a few inches, about 6 or so, maybe a little more than 6 inches, for weaving in the ends at the end. And what I like to do before starting the next color is secure the 2 colors with a knot. It doesn't have to be a knot that remains. Some people prefer to not have knots in their yarn when they're weaving in ends. So I'm going to do it loosely, and you can always come back and pull that out and join this and weave in your ends separately. Another thing is, because we're working the yarn doubled, you don't want to weave in your ends doubled because it'll show up way too bulky in the work. Make sure you weave in each end separately, and not only will it be more invisible, but it'll also make the work a little more secure as well. You want to have a contrast colored stitch marker for the end of this row or round, because we're switching it around. So I'm just going to have it handy so when we get to the end of the round I have it here. So row 16 starts with a yarn over. I'm going to yarn over and knit 2, then slip 1, knit 2. And you're going to repeat what's in the bracket twice, so that means slip 1, knit 2 again, and then repeat from the asterisk to end. So then we're going to slip the stitch marker, yarn over, knit 2. Okay, we've come to the end of this row, which is now going to turn into a round. Notice we have plenty of stitches on the needle so that the stitches come to the very end of the tips. We're going to place a stitch marker at the end of this row, and it's a different color, so we're now marking the beginning and end of the round, and we're just going to start the very next round without turning our work. No more purling. We're just knitting right into the beginning of the row like that. And so on this particular row, this happens to be a plain knit row, which is replacing the plain knit round, which replaces the purl rows when we were working in rows. So that long tail now from before, when we're done, is going to sew up this section right here, and the remainder of the pattern involves a patterning row opposite, or patterning round opposite a plain knit round. We're going to change colors a couple more times, doing it exactly the same way we just changed color this time. And then a little further on in the pattern, there's a couple of very large cables done, which kind of look like overlapping waves in the pattern, but again, no purling. It's just going to be done with switching them like you would a normal cable, all on a knit background. And then when you get a little further along, we're going to start having a lot more stitches on our cable. This is a 24-inch circular right now. When you get up towards the end, like for example, the last round has over 400 stitches on it. That's going to be too much for this one needle. So what you want to do is either get a longer circular or even get a couple of circulars. And what you'll do is place stitches on this side and then have stitches on this side, and then just alternate them as you go around, and then bind off, and you're done. And just make sure to weave in your ends separately, not together, even though all the yarns were doubled throughout. This pattern and many more are available on the website, so please come check it out at redheart.com.